can't stand Five Nights at Freddy's. I lived through the nightmare those games portray, so there is nothing entertaining about them to me. People think it's based on Chuck E. Cheese, but that's just the aesthetic. The truth is, Five Nights at Freddy's is based on a horrific true story, and I was unlucky enough to be at the center of it. Many years ago, I was just a little kid, a scared orphaned boy at the mercy of the foster care system. I was brought into a foster home run by an old retired couple. The grandma-grandpa pair already had multiple foster kids in their care. They were nice, but during our very first conversation, I knew there was something off about them.
Who are you? Can you tell me your name, mister? I know you're scared, little fella, but I promise you're going to fit right in.
Do you like teddy bears? Do you want to see one?
Okay.
All right then. Why don't you follow me?
I thought they were going to give me a new stuffed animal as a welcoming gift, but instead, I was shown their creations. 5 gigantic animal costumes were sitting around the house, each of them some kind of home-sewn amalgamation of different parts. I had no idea if they were supposed to be bears or rabbits, so I just pretended they were a kind of animal I hadn't learned about yet. In fact, I couldn't even look at them. Something about it just creeped me the hell out. I knew I made the right call when I finally got to talk to some other kids. According to them, our foster parents worked hard to create them just so the kids had something cool to look at or play with when walking around the house. Later on, I made friends with a kid I'll just call Sean. We quickly became close as we shared a room and a teacher at school. We did pretty much everything together. I was happy to have a friend as well as a new home, but the longer I lived there, the worse things seemed to get. Gradually, a stench built up in every room and every corner of the house. Nobody could figure out where it was coming from. Beyond our general living conditions, creepy things were happening more and more. At night, I could hear noises outside my room. They sounded like distant screams somewhere, but I was too scared to leave my room to check. Along with everyone else, I started to lose sleep. I was wide awake every night, trying my hardest not to listen to those horrible noises, but I always failed, leaving me falling asleep all day at school. One day, my friend Sean got sick. I got out of bed and went to get him up so we could get ready together, but he could barely keep his eyes open. I didn't know what was wrong with him. Our foster parents said he was running a fever, so he would have to stay home. I didn't want to go to school alone, but I didn't have a choice. When school was done, I went home. Sadly, the second I walked through the door, both my foster parents were right there waiting for me with awful news. They told me Sean had been taken out of the foster program. He was gone. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Devastated, I went to my room to cry for a while, but it was about to get so much worse than I ever could have imagined. The second I walked into my room, I saw it. There was a new monstrous costume sitting in the middle of the floor, and its eyes, they were human. They were familiar. I'd seen those eyes before just that morning, but now they were hidden behind all these wrong, fake animal parts. I ran right down the stairs and out of that nightmare house before anyone could catch me. The first person I ran into, I begged them to call the cops. Finally, the police searched the house, and my foster parents were arrested when the grisly truth was unearthed. All the costumes in the house were filled with corpses. Those demonic people had been sewing their foster children into these animal suits, cutting and twisting and breaking their bodies, reforming them with brutal amateur surgery into the abominations I was living with. The foster care program was just their scheme to collect more victims. The worst part is what they did to my friend Sean. They made him sick and helpless by overdosing him with medications, then put him through hell to make him fit into that costume, placing him in our room for me to discover like it was some kind of sick joke. But unfortunately for them, my mind hadn't yet been broken. Not completely anyway. I knew Sean was in there, and I wasn't going to stick around to share his fate. The news of this story shocked the small town I lived in, but this all happened before the days of the internet, so it managed to stay our town's darkest secret. That was until someone turned my most traumatic experience into Five Nights at Freddy's and put it on blast for the whole world to see. Thanks to those games, I now face constant reminders of what happened. This FNAF story was inspired by a viral incident involving a couple named Martha and Eugene Grimes, who were known for fostering children and aiding the needy. but were really harboring dark secrets in their Victorian home. A series of disturbing photos showcases the Grimes couple, terrified victims, and horrifying bear costumes, which were allegedly what the Grimes couple used as taxidermy for their victims. It was said that the couple took out dozens of foster children by sewing them into animal costumes. Guests seeking refuge were sedated by the Grimes and forcibly stitched into animal costumes, turned into unwilling performers for a perverse entertainment. The Grimes' grotesque charade continued undetected for 18 years, the truth hidden by the couple's veneer of generosity and community spirit. The horrors were unearthed in 2022 when a former foster child, triggered by the game Five Nights at Freddy's, recalled the trauma, leading to a shocking investigation. As the investigation deepened, authorities uncovered a mass grave on the property's outskirts. Amidst the overgrowth, many victims were found, still grotesquely bound within their costume prisons.
My parents left me home alone for the weekend. They gave me a list of chores and a bunch of rules like don't answer the door for strangers, don't have any friends over, that sort of thing. I promised I would do everything they said, but really, I just wanted them to leave. Wouldn't any kid want the house to themselves? Once they were gone, I got to do whatever I wanted. I ate junk food, played video games, and even got to surf the internet on sites I usually wasn't allowed to go on when they were around. Later in the evening, as I was cleaning up and getting ready for bed, I heard a knock at the door. I didn't believe it at first, but I couldn't stand to ignore it. So I snuck downstairs to look through the people. I was expecting to see some kids running away from playing Ding Dong Ditch, but instead, it was a guy in a purple suit. Not having a clue what he wanted, I stayed quiet and out of sight, hoping the guy would just give up and leave. When I put my eye back up to the people, I nearly lost my shit, because I saw the man's face pressed right up against it.
I know you're home. Open the door, Michael.
How the hell do you know my name?
The same reason I know you're all alone. Your parents told me.
You're lying. Why would they do that?
Because they wanted me to deliver to you a gift, Michael. Don't you see?
The man then stepped aside, revealing a huge box, big enough for him to fit inside. However, I almost felt convinced this guy was actually a friend of my parents. Despite how frightening it all felt, I ended up opening the door for him. To my surprise, he didn't immediately rush in and attack me like I was worried he would. He just stood there with a huge grin on his face. I then stepped aside to allow the man to push the box inside. After that, he was gone. I immediately closed and locked the door, leaving me alone once again, except for the unknown giant box. Starting from the top, I grabbed a corner of the box and started slowly tearing it down. I uncovered about 2 feet and then I saw it, the face staring back at me. I almost wish it was a human face, but in a way, it was much worse. It was the face of a life-size dummy of Freddy Fazbear. It didn't make sense. I hadn't been to Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria since I was a kid. Last time I heard about it, the place was getting shut down. And then, it finally dawned on me. My parents must have bought the real Freddy Fazbear at an auction. Thankfully, he was still in the box, just like an action figure. Surely he didn't work anymore, so I just left him like that and went back upstairs to my room. Earlier, I had planned to sleep, but after that whole interaction, I was antsy as hell. I played some video games for a few more hours until I passed out. However, every time I went downstairs to grab something to drink or eat, I saw it in the corner of my eye. To be honest, it was as creepy as hell. I didn't want to look directly at him, but I wanted to make sure he was still there, and that he hadn't moved like the video games. As far as I could tell, he was lifeless. Eventually, I got tired enough to get into bed. Yet, just as I let my guard down, it started. The noises. The last thing I wanted to do was go down there, so I pulled out my phone to check the CCTV cameras my parents had placed all around the house. Camera 1 was front porch, nothing, but camera 2 was the foyer, where Freddy was supposed to be. But there was nothing there anymore. It was just a box, but no Freddy. He was alive and loose in my house. Flipping through the cameras like a madman, I found him moments later, standing still in the kitchen. As I kept changing the view of the cameras, I noticed he was getting closer to me. I begged and prayed that he would not be able to climb the stairs, but then I didn't have to watch to know where he was anymore. As soon as he took the first step, I could hear him. I put down my phone. I couldn't look anymore. There was a camera in the hallway outside my door, but I just couldn't watch. I didn't want to listen either, but second by second, he drew closer until he finally stopped right outside my bedroom. With trembling hands, I grabbed my phone and pulled up the camera feed again, checking everywhere, but Freddy had just disappeared. I didn't know where he'd gone, though I couldn't leave the door open, so I stood up to close it.
Somebody help me! He's trying to kill me!
And since this traumatic incident, there have been no signs of life from Freddy Fazbear. The head of the boy has since gone missing. Police searched all through the house and around the perimeters of the house, but to no avail.
I suffer from PTSD relating to an incident I was involved in decades ago. When I first heard about Five Nights at Freddy's, I didn't realize the lore was so heavily inspired by that very same tragedy. By the time I discovered what the game was all about, I'd already dug too far. It all started back when I first worked at McDonald's. However, for the sake of simplicity, I'll just call it Freddy Fazbear's. As usual, I was working the night shift. I took orders, cooked the food, served it, cleaned, and did just about everything. Even though it was only a Wednesday night, it was the middle of the summer, so we were quite busy. I made pizzas and poured drinks for customer after customer, keeping the place going. For context, this wasn't just the average crummy chain restaurant. We were actually popular. Fazbear's was a place for people to hang out, especially young folks. Teenagers were always searching for stomping grounds, guys for places to hit on chicks, broke couples for cheap dates, and we were all of that to all those people. Unfortunately, my shift took a sharp left turn when this older guy randomly walked in. The best way I can describe him is that he looked like Jeffrey Dahmer, but at least 30 years older. He honestly looked horribly out of place, especially not at Fazbear's around people half his age. The way he smiled made him look mentally ill, and everything about him was just eerie. Of course, I tried my best not to judge as the man came up to the counter, but when I asked him how I could take his order, our interaction only made me more suspicious of him. For several seconds, he didn't even say anything. He just stared at me with these empty, unfeeling eyes. He then reached into his pocket, pulled out some change, and placed it on the counter while locking his eyes at me. It seemed like little more than a crumpled 5 and some coins. Regardless, it didn't line up with what he ordered when he finally spoke.
I want a large pizza with lots of room for red sauce. Sir, we can give you extra sauce, but $6 isn't enough. Shh! I'll be back very soon. And when I return, I expect to see an extra large pizza. The biggest size you have. Enough to hold more red sauce than you've ever seen. I don't know if I could do that, sir.
Before I had time to get into it with him, he just left. He walked right out of the restaurant, leaving his money behind. I was completely baffled. That guy just gave me the creeps. But aside from that, treating me the way he did in front of all the customers annoyed the hell out of me. I hated feeling embarrassed by entitled people, but just to keep him from coming back and embarrassing me again, I decided to make his pizza. In order to make sure it was done to his liking, I left the register in the hands of a coworker and went back to make the damn thing myself. After I stretched the dough as far as it would go, I slid it into the oven to par bake so all the extra sauce wouldn't make it soggy. As I stood by the oven, I was staring at the floor and listening to the noise of the restaurant when suddenly I heard the unthinkable. Explosions, gunshots, dozens of them, even hundreds, followed instantly by a wave of screaming. I dropped to the floor on instinct, not knowing where any of it was coming from. There was panic in all directions. I had to figure out what the hell was going on, but I didn't want to go near it, so I got to my knees, stayed low, and rushed to the back office. Once inside, I closed the door and locked myself in. The monitors for all the security cameras in the building were inside that office. I looked through them and saw what was happening in the restaurant. It was that same creep. Every camera I checked, every angle I saw, he was in it, with multiple firearms on him, taking people out right in front of my eyes. I picked up the phone next to the monitor and called 911. I told the operator what was happening, and once I knew the cops would be on the way, I got the hell out of there. So I went straight for the back door and ran for my life. The cops arrived at the building minutes later, but the shooter wasn't done. He wasn't taking hostages, and he wasn't surrendering. After a 2-hour standoff, during which that monster continuously slaughtered innocent people, he was finally taken down by a SWAT sniper. When it was all said and done, over 20 people were dead, all customers of mine. I could never go back. Decades later, this Five Nights at Freddy's was released, and I come to find out it was allegedly inspired by this incident. It's made my PTSD come back with a vengeance. The pure dread and terror, the guilt and shame of the things I could have done differently. It's all resurfaced because of Five Nights at Freddy's. It's been notoriously known that the FNAF game creator has stated that the game's themes were inspired by tragic events, such as the 1984 San Ysidro McDonald's massacre, which involved a mass shooting. The incident occurred at a McDonald's restaurant in the San Ysidro neighborhood of San Diego, California, on July 18, 1984. The perpetrator was 41-year-old James Huberty, who fatally took out 22 people and wounded 19 others before being taken out by a police sniper, approximately 77 minutes after he had first opened fire. Prior to the tragic event, it was said that James calmly informed his wife that he was going to hunt humans. A few minutes later, he went out and did what he did at the McDonald's restaurant. The tragedy remains the deadliest mass shooting in California till this day.